Do you ever have that moment when your dad is blabbing out concepts while you're sitting at the computer trying to write but you can't keep up with it, and it makes you even more stressed out than you already are? But it all turned out in the end. Hey everyone, it's Lilia, and I'll be talking in more of a somber tone than what I had started in. Since the English Honors Project was based on tension in society, I wanted to focus on free will and how war controls humanity. I read 3 books that all tied to 2 main themes that relate to tension in society and how the protagonists relate to that tension personally. The first theme is war and the horror of war. The second theme is the idea of, does humanity really have free will? Let's start with Slaughterhouse-Five. This is an anti-war book and is partly autobiographical of the author, Kurt Vonnegut. Vonnegut relates to my chosen themes through a character named Billy Pilgrim. Pilgrim is actually a pawn in the story, for he doesn't affect anything in the story. Everything affects him. Slaughterhouse-Five relates to the horror of war and tells a story that may be a person coping with these horrors. Billy Pilgrim time jumps through moments of his life, and the book uses fantasy as a coping mechanism. After the war, might I add, where he gets a head injury from a plane crash, Billy travels to Tralfamadore, the planet where the creatures don't live in the moment. They're the guys with the eyes on their hands. They say that when someone is dead, they are in a bad state at the moment. Otherwise, they are perfectly fine in other moments. But the Tralfamadorians have the ability to time jump. The book says, so it goes. Whenever someone dies, someone did die or someone will die. Billy adopts the ways of the Tralfamadorians, making my point of questioning free will. By time jumping, he was adopting a perception where time is not a constant, and if everything happens once, then there would be no concept of free will. Because everything's already happening, but humans live in a linear timeline and therefore in reality would prefer the idea that they have the ability to affect the future. Thus free will. On to the next book, Exile by Richard North Patterson, which is a book that shows the tension between Israel, Palestine, and the Middle East. David Wolfe meets Hannah Arif and Saeed Khalid, who are both Palestinian in law school. David ends up having an affair with Hannah, who is to be wedded to Saeed. 13 years later, Hannah is arrested for the murder of the Prime Minister of Israel, and David is her lawyer. Did I mention that he was Jewish? These events took away any free will he thought he had had. Before meeting Hannah Arif once again, he had a fiancée, many political connections, and a way into Congress. After becoming her lawyer became public, he lost everything except for his job as a lawyer. Not only does this book show the limitations of free will, but we see the struggles of the past and present between Israelis and Palestinians. The book highlights the turmoil that has been going on for literally thousands of years between competing ideologies and religions in the Middle East. Specifically, Exile deals with contemporary examples. Saeed Khalid has so much hate for the Zionists because he witnessed what happened at Sabra and Shatila, where Saeed lived. He witnessed the murder of his entire family. This turned into becoming a terrorist and part of the assassination of the Prime Minister, where he possibly framed his wife. Yeah. In the book, the Prime Minister of Israel, Ben Aaron, wanted peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, although there were people on both sides who didn't want peace. These were the extremists, and the conflicts between them led to death. This all affected the tension between the two societies and completely changed individuals' lives, such as David's. 1984 is one of the most interesting books I've ever read. In my opinion, the members of the party, which are the members of the government, are absolutely insane. This book shows how government can use war as a control mechanism to take away the free will from humanity. The party is so ingrained in the set of rules they establish that the main character, Winston Smith, who thinks there is some free will, finds out that there isn't any in the world that he lives in. Taken to the extreme, this book shows the tension this government goes through to take away everyone's free will. The party controls everyone and everything. They control the past and people's minds. If people show even a bit of emotion, that person is investigated by the thought police. Winston was born before the revolution started creating this government that controls everything. He still finds the past fascinating and hopes to bring that back once again. Although, this government is so set on their ideals that they capture Winston and torture him to the extent where they break him. The leader of the party, Big Brother, is to be loved by all. Whatever he says is true. If 2 plus 2 equals 5, then that's what people believe. Unfortunately for Winston, anyone who's accused of thought crime is to be put in the Ministry of Love and tortured until they learn what the party thinks is right. This government even comes up with a new language that shortens the English language as much as possible, called Newspeak. This language makes synonyms such as terrific or splendid to the word good into super good or double super good. In the end, Winston was once believed that the saying, "down with Big Brother," was the right thing to say. Through long-term extreme torture, he eventually is convinced to love Big Brother. The things that this government does to limit free will is really taken to the extreme. As it turns out, both Winston and his accomplice, Julia, were both under the delusion of free will. The party really knew everything that they were doing. There are telescreens everywhere listening to what they were saying. As what posters all over the country said, Big Brother is always watching. The party used war to gel the population against a common foe, and they would take away any sense of history by constantly altering anything that alluded to any past. Everything was about the present, and they would even change enemies. If something was destroyed, it was considered to have never existed in the first place. They used tension in society against the populace and took away free will to completely control the populace. While all 3 books were very different in their premise, they shared these common themes of war and the idea of free will from different angles. The constant threat of conflict and the construct of free will are always common themes in creating tension in society, and we see how each protagonist in these novels in particular were affected by tension in society.